Hello everybody, this is Tyler here once again from the Character Workshop, where you pretty much can't say the phrase, I like trains, without somebody referencing whatever we're going to be talking about today. What are we talking about today? Well, if you for whatever reason didn't see the title, we are talking about another pretty well-known animated web series on YouTube within the past decade or so. We are talking about asdfmovie. Some of you are probably going to be going to the comments and be like, I thought it's pronounced asdfmovie. Well, I'm pretty sure it's officially pronounced asdfmovie, as these characters did make a cameo appearance in an episode of Ed's World where Ed, Tom, and Matt went to a theme park called, I believe it was Asdfland, which is, of course, a reference to asdfmovie, so I'm assuming asdf is the official pronunciation for this series. But with that portion out of the way, let's actually get started talking about the show. As you guys may remember, a couple episodes back, I talked about Ed's World, which was another pretty well-known British animated web series. And the character Tom is based on and voiced by Tom Ridgewell, who was basically the main guy responsible for the asdfmovie series. And every episode, as of right now, has been uploaded onto his official YouTube channel, Tomska. Now, as for how asdfmovie is formatted, is going to be a little bit tricky to explain, but I'll do my best. So, it's almost kind of like, you know, a sketch comedy series, like something along the lines of, let's say, Saturday Night Live, or Living Color, or a typical, late night TV show. So, it's kind of like that, except, you know, cut like, 90% off, so you're basically get like about an average of maybe 2, 3, maybe even 4 minutes of just of content to watch. And a lot of the jokes in asdfmovie often either consist of puns or visual gags or just straight up randomness. Now, in terms of the art style, every single human character in the series, as well as animals and any other type of creatures, often have a pretty simplistic looking appearance, often, you know, not having a nose and not having any ears, and don't have any defining features for the most part, with a few minor exceptions. But yeah, and that's pretty much been the style throughout the entire series, and it's definitely not going to be going away whatsoever. And something that's not very common with animation nowadays is that the asdfmovie series is in black and white, so there's always like a white background and the characters have thick black outlines, and there's barely ever any color in the show, with a few exceptions of like blood every now and then. And there was one particular skit that I remember that I believe was from episode 7, where somebody flipped on a switch and like everything was in color, including the person who flipped the switch, and yeah, pretty interesting results. So the first episode premiered on August 10th, 2008, and it was about less than 2 minutes long, and it was animated by James Cunningham, otherwise known as Epiku Fairu. I might have butchered that name. I do apologize if you're somehow watching this, which I doubt it. And interesting thing to note about when it comes to the asdfmovie series was that the first couple entries were animated by a variety of different people. And speaking of which, on to episode 2, which was animated by Ed's World himself, Ed Gold. And not only that, this episode in particular was what introduced one of asdfmovie's most well-known gags, I like trains. The basic premise of this joke, when it first showed up in the second episode, was there were a couple kids. One said that they like to sing, the second one said, I like dancing, and then the third one just like, you know, just stares off and says in a pretty monotone voice, I like trains. And then a train passes by and runs him over. And this joke's been repeated multiple times throughout the franchise. In particular, this episode, obviously, since this was the introduction to the joke. And I did mention earlier that this episode was animated by Ed Guld. Well, the I Like Trains kid, as the character is referred to as, is also voiced by Ed Guld, which is quite a coincidence. And, of course, to my knowledge, I'm pretty sure they just only used that one line, like, every time this character appeared. Like, this is, like, one of the easiest jobs that, like, Ed, I think, had to do, was just say 3 words and, like, boom, made one of the most famous characters from pretty much this entire series. And then we have episode 3, which was animated by Jamie Spicer Lewis. And I didn't even know about this, but apparently, funny enough, years later, this guy who animated the 3rd episode also went to voice Tord in the Eddsworld's original finale. And speaking of Eddsworld, one thing I kind of want to bring up is that on the same day that I released the Eddsworld episode of It Came From England, Eddsworld themselves just made a new episode, and I guess they're now coming back, so perfect timing? I don't know. But anyways, interestingly enough, Jamie Spicer Lewis not only would animate episode 3, but would also animate episode 5 as well. And then we get to episode 4, which was animated by a guy by the name of Ben Wanchomp Smallman, who not only animated this episode, but would also animate pretty much every single asdfmovie episode from episode 6 onwards. So yeah, I guess after a couple episodes, Tom finally figured out the perfect guy that he needed for his to animate his series. So I guess from episodes 4 and then 6 onwards, they decided to have Ben Wanchomp Smallman be the animator. And also, the 4th episode was, to my knowledge, the first episode to include guest voice actors, which I guess would then be a recurring thing throughout later installments. And the ones from this episode include Jax Films, Egoraptor, and then, of course, Ed Guld himself. And this would, of course, be the final asdfmovie episode with Ed's involvement before his death in March 25th, 2012. Then we get to episode 5, which was the 2nd and final episode animated by Jamie. And this introduced another pretty iconic character from asdfmovie, the Mind Turtle. And basically the premise of this character is that, actually, now that I really think about it, I don't really find the Mind Turtle's gimmick as, I guess, entertaining as the I Like Trains guy, since, I guess the one guy says, "Hello, Mind Turtle," and the Mind Turtle's like, "Oh, hello!" And then you step on it and it explodes, because explosions are funny. I don't know. It's, I'll get more onto, you know, my opinions on asdfmovie now, but, since, episode 5 was the first episode to not have, Ed Guld's involvement, or at least to be released after his death, I think, like, the last portion where, like, the one guy says, do you ever get tired of being random? And then the other guy just has, like, a duck beak, and then, the first guy has a duck beak as well, and then says, "Me neither." I have a feeling that that portion was, I guess, dedicated to Ed Guld, because I remember, like, Ed himself used that same joke, in one of his comics, so that was pretty nice of Tom, so paying respects to Ed, but, yeah, anyways, I mean, I've talked about some of the more, I guess, important stuff when it comes to asdfmovie. Now I guess it's time for me to talk about my, my personal thoughts on, the overall franchise as of right now. Now, some of you are probably going to be, going to this portion saying, "Oh, but you've only talked about the first 5 episodes. That means you've only seen those." No, I've seen pretty much, every single asdfmovie episode up until this point. And I think, nowadays, I just am like, about it. Like, don't get me wrong, I really liked, asdfmovie back in the day, back when I would say the series was in its prime, but, like, you know, as time goes on, I'm like, people still watch this? I don't know, you know, some of you out there may still like asdfmovie, and that's perfectly okay, but, like, I don't know, personally for me, it just, I guess the type of humor that's, like, in asdfmovie is just, I don't know, it hasn't aged 100% well. Like I mentioned about Mind Turtle, that's, like, a joke that I don't really think has really aged as well as yeah, like Train's kid, or heck, some of the other jokes in the show. Probably one of my favorites was when one guy said, "Oh hey, I heard carrots can improve your eyesight," and then the other guy like literally puts carrots into his eyes, and he's like, "You lied to me." So while some of the jokes, in my opinion, haven't aged well, there are still some that like I genuinely enjoy. But I guess my opinion on the series as a whole is just eh. And you know, I've always wondered like why they've considered continuing asdfmovie, but I think it's a pretty obvious reason. First of all, it gets them a lot of views. It normally always shows up in YouTube trending. Like every episode has had like millions upon millions of views. So it's definitely pretty well known. Exactly. And I'm also assuming that Tom is like, well, you know what? The asdfmovie series is really the only thing that people kind of care about me for nowadays, so you know what? I might as well just milk it. And that's pretty much how we're at with asdfmovie today. 12 years later, and it's still got quite the fan base and quite the following. And yeah, not really much else to say about asdfmovie besides that. So yeah, that's gonna be about it for this pretty short episode of It Came From England. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and I know some of you are probably going to be fans of asdfmovie out there. Feel free to let me know if you still think the series is going strong. But with that being said, if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more episodes of It Came From England and just mediocre plush content in general. Leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. That's about it. This is Tyler from the Character Workshop, signing out. Next time, we go back into the TARDIS, but this time, our protagonist has celery on his clothing.